D-Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David Janes, here with you on a frigid day in Nashville, Tennessee. It's going to heat up tonight, though. Four Nations face-off final.
Woo-hoo,
The United States versus Canada. 7 o'clock puck drop. We'll talk to Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet NHL insider, at 1 o'clock. Elliot is live in Boston, where the final will take place. Can't wait to talk to Elliot about that.
I feel like we need to get like Casey Affleck or Matt Damon or Ben Affleck. Remember Casey Affleck in the SNL skit where he's the rude Dunkin' Donuts Boston guy?
Yes.
I feel like we need to get some of that vibe in Boston because I feel like there's every person like that is in a Dunkin' Donuts around Boston right now, just talking all kinds of trash about the Canadians and getting ready for it. Like this is going to have some sizzle tonight.
Yes.
Maybe we need to get Hal Gill to do his best Boston guy thing. He can do it.
We've got Hal on speed dial. I bet we can find him.
We might have to.
Now and 2 o'clock.
An inspirational Boston mass hole speech.
Can you say that?
Mass hole.
I know.
A mass.
I know.
Hole.
Yes.
Those are two legal words.
Mass hole.
All right, guys. I have a take.
We're little kids.
I have a take about college basketball. So last night, there was an upset in the SEC. Missouri, 110. Alabama, 98. What I did like about the end of this game is that Dennis Gates, the head coach of the Missouri Tigers, with about a second and a half left in the game, took a microphone from the public address announcer and implored the fans of Missouri, do not rush the court. Do not do it. Missouri had been fined $250,000 by the SEC for storming the court against then number 1 Kansas in December. The students listened. They did not rush the court. But I was thinking about this despite the fact that the students didn't rush the court. Tell me if you think this is a ridiculous take. If you are a ranked team and you defeat another ranked team, you shouldn't be allowed to rush the court. I think rushing the court should be reserved for unranked teams beating top teams. Missouri was 15th in the country, or is 15th in the country. Alabama is fourth. And I was thinking, okay, should there be a threshold? Like you have to be at least 10 rankings back, which in this case, Missouri could rush the court because they're 11 spots back. But I'm glad Missouri did not rush the court. I don't like ranked teams rushing the court after beating other ranked teams.
I think if you beat number 1, that would be
That's an exception?
That would be an exception.
Okay.
But I think if you're a ranked team, and remember, Missouri was 0-16 in the league last year. So this is a new, and Missouri's had some great programs over the long haul. It's not like there's some program that's never won, but they dipped pretty far last year. So you can see the excitement, enthusiasm of being able to beat really good teams, how it would take over. So it's an ongoing thing. I do think that last night was not one where you rushed the court. I would have been disappointed. If I were the coach, I'd have been disappointed. Hey, we're pretty good. We're ranked. They're ranked. We beat them at home. That's not that big of a deal. In fact, was Missouri even an underdog?
That's a good question.
Maybe by a point or two. I think
we had a texter just text us the same thing. So I'll look that up. But David has the clip of Dennis Gates telling fans, don't rush the court. Listen to how they respond.
Wow, Dennis Gates. Dennis Gates is on the mic saying, don't rush the court.
It costs a lot of money these days to a university.
Yeah.
What a ball game.
Wow, Gates gets the microphone here.
Come on, coach.
Nevertheless, it's not going to
let us have fun.
An incredible night for Missouri. They score 110. That's a program record for an SEC game.
Now, all they had to do was wait 60 seconds or whatever, or let Alabama lead.
Yeah.
But listen to the fans. They were not happy.
Well, okay, but they should have just done the Vanderbilt thing or the Vanderbilt rule. They haven't really got a chance to do it yet, but wait the 60 seconds, right? That's the compromise.
Yeah, give them 45 seconds. Let them shake hands and do what they need to do, because they want to get out of there just as quickly as y'all want to get on the court. Best believe the opposing team.
Missouri was favored, by the way.
Yeah, so how much of that?
So that should be part of your rule, right? If you're favored,
if you
you
win,
don't rush the court.
You don't rush the court. I think now it's gotten to a point, I believe, that these kids enjoy rushing the court. They just do. And what he doesn't understand is the more you tell a college kid they can't do it, what's going to happen?
They're going to do it.
They're going to do it anyway. I mean, it's just like, instead of coming to them, sending out emails throughout the whole, couple of days prior to the game. Hey, listen, do not store, or give them guidelines. If you continue to reiterate that, not saying don't do it, but reiterate, hey, listen, you can, but these are the stipulations. I think they take to that more than you just telling them, no, you can't do it. Oh, I can't? Oh, really?
Watch
me. You ain't going to stop me, which they're not going to stop them. What's going to happen is the school's just going to get fined. Are you going to tell those kids they can't come back to games? No, you're not. They're going to keep coming to games. So, listen, I'm with if a 15 beat a 4 and y'all were favored, don't storm the court. But I can't tell them that you don't want them to, but then again, what's going to happen. So, it is what it is.
Here's a twist. Okay. I was at the Vanderbilt Auburn game. Auburn #1.
Mm-hmm.
So Auburn's #1. They shouldn't be storming the court. But Auburn, as we know, is got a traveling road show now, which is incredible what they've built. Because there was a time where if I said, hey, Auburn's basketball fans, they're so awesome. They're going to travel. They're going to really, like, they would have one of the smallest groups of fans at the SEC tournament every year. And they would have nothing in terms of a road fan base in Nashville, even though there's always been a lot of Auburn alum. People just didn't care about basketball. Bruce Pearl has made them care. I noticed after the game where they beat Vanderbilt, where they're favored to win,
Did
right?
they run on the court?
They didn't storm the court, but the whole team stood out there.
No, okay.
And they kind of riled up the fans, which I didn't think was the classiest thing to do. And it wasn't. And they did run along the student section and, give them the be quiet or a wave goodbye. Like, okay, you want to be like that? That's how you're going to be? All right. But then I noticed as the crowd filed out, right, the Auburn fans started not storming the court.
Walking onto the court.
But they walked onto the court. And by the time 15, 20, 25 minutes have gone by, because it takes a while to get out of Memorial Gym. That place was packed, right? And Memorial Gym was built in 1950, whatever. It's not the easiest place to get in and out of. But there was a ton of Auburn fans on the court, just hanging out, talking, staying as long as they wanted to stay. Not that they were like hooting and hollering,
but just enjoying themselves.
What is that? Right?
That's nothing, Willie. They just enjoy themselves.
It's not even your court.
But y'all left.
Get off the court.
Willie, y'all were gone.
Get off our court.
But y'all were gone, Willie.
Get off my court. That's my court. That's my wood. Get off my wood. Celebrate in your locker room. Fans, go over to a local joint. Take over don't celebrate on our floor. You don't do that.
Wouldn't that be better if they did stay on y'all court so y'all can go, so all the Vandy people can get
we can get our cars
exactly.
and get out and get home?
Absolutely. You don't have to fight through.
They were just being polite, you're saying.
Absolutely.
Southern hospitality.
There we go.
Come on,
it's
man.
a different part to say, but you know what?
Listen, I can see if this, because I went back and I looked at the history of these matchups, and I can see if, Missouri hadn't beaten Alabama in the last 20 tries. Okay, you beat them, then you still. But this is an evenly matched contest. Alabama, up until that point, had won 2 in a row. Okay? Or, 2 in a row. No. They won 4 in a row. But before that, you won 3 in a row. So it's a back and forth. It's not really.
That was clearly not
exactly
a rush the floor.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Even though
if you are
a good performance by them.
If you are the betting favorite, even if you are a lower ranked team against your opponent, you should not be allowed to court storm.
Yeah.
And maybe I have to
the Adam Vingan rule.
Right. Maybe I have to figure out the threshold here. Again, Alabama was 4th. or is 4th. Missouri is 15th. Is it 10 spots? Because in that case, Missouri just sneaks in because they were 11 spots behind Alabama. Maybe I need to make it 15 or 20. I don't know. But usually, I'm not anti-court storming. I just like it reserved for an unranked team beating a highly ranked team. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's a good problem, and Missouri got a big win. We should mention Vanderbilt's game last night against Kentucky. There's a pattern developing here, and Vanderbilt has gone up against yet another really good team on their home court, played a very good first half, but the wheels came off in the second half. And the same thing keeps happening to Vanderbilt. And D-May said this before, and D-May's somebody's car alarm's going off in the parking lot. It's mine? No way.
We think it's Willie's. Yeah.
How could that be? Is it off now?
No.
They said your trunk's open.
My trunk's open.
Well, maybe
I got
Do
issues.
you need to step out, Willie?
Yeah, you may go-
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Apparently I do. But teammates, we're talking
Yes.
about Vanderbilt in the second half, just running into a wall. They are getting worn down with their lack of size up front. And Kentucky did a great job of wearing them down. But if you take a look at what Tennessee did, what Kentucky did, what Auburn did, and to a point Florida, killing them in the paint and surrounding with good shooters, Vanderbilt just can't cover all of that. And if you have a good shooting night, which all of those teams have done, the second half is a problem.
I have these numbers from the Associated Press. Vanderbilt has allowed opponents to shoot 56% in the second half, 45% from 3 in the second half this season.
And like D-Mace texted during the second half and said, man, Kentucky can't miss. And I've had that thought in the last few games here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying to myself, is Vanderbilt's defense that bad that they can't stop the other team? Or are they, to a point, also catching teams that are just shooting lights out on that particular day? That's something I'm sure the coaching staff is sitting there when they evaluate the tape and said, okay, how much are we just not playing as good a defense as we need to play? They know they don't have the size to start with. That's going to be a problem every time they play. But they've had better defensive efforts than this. Or is it they're just playing great teams on their home court? And I said it yesterday. I said for Vanderbilt to beat Kentucky at Kentucky, Kentucky's got to be off a little bit. And they played a good first half, and Kentucky started out red hot, then cooled off, and Vanderbilt by the end of the half was right there. It was a 1-point game at the half. The second half was a different story.
So just looking at some recent games, last night, Vanderbilt trailed Kentucky by 1 at halftime. Kentucky won rather easily in the second half. Vanderbilt led Tennessee by 13 at halftime, by as many as 16 in the first half in Knoxville. They lost that game. Back and forth game against Auburn. Auburn took a huge lead at the beginning of the game. Vanderbilt fought back, took a lead in the second half, but was unable to close the deal. They led Oklahoma at halftime earlier this season on the road, and then allowed, I think, 60 points, I want to say.
That was a nightmare.
Half.
And Tennessee got 50 in the second half. Also, Florida for about about 25 to 30 minutes of the game. Vanderbilt was trading baskets right there with Florida and played a really good game, but could not quite hang on. The same kind of thing happened to them on a smaller level. Once again, we're talking about some of the best teams in the country, and all but one of them were on the road, and the one that was at home where this happened was against number 1. So you have to keep that in perspective. But this is in the backdrop as they play Ole Miss on Saturday, because Ole Miss is a really good team, and Vanderbilt really needs that game. They need that game in a big way. They need 3 more wins, I think, to feel good about their chances. And this is what we were saying all along when you said, hey, Lunardi's got him as an 8 seed. Lunardi's got him as a 9 seed. You are not guaranteed to win a single game going forward. in this league.
Yeah, out of their 9 games that they've played, the last 9 games, 7 of them have been against a ranked opponents. Well, 6 of them have been against ranked opponents. Now they played UT twice and Kentucky twice in that span, but yet still you have 6 opponents. Well, no, 7 opponents. Like I said, 7 of your 9 opponents that are top 25 teams. And I think in the first half, especially the last 3 games, Auburn, Tennessee, and Kentucky, the first half, I think Vandy, with the style of play, and we talked about this before, Willie, it depends on how the refs are reffing it. It seemed like the first half of those 3 games, which ultimately end up being losses, they allowed them to sort of play physical ball. The second half, I think that's where Vandy gets in trouble. They're trying to play physical ball, but then the fatigue factor kicks in, and you have more importantly, you have your 2 big guys. They always get in foul trouble in the second half. That means they're just not a deep team, and they're not a big team. Those teams that beat them, Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, they can go to their bench and get production. Vandy, it's hard for them to go to their bench and get production from bigger guys. They're
They
just
don't
a small
have it.
team.
They just don't
have it.
Not
And
even one that is a project or somebody who's a space heater. They don't even have that guy.
They don't have it. And when you're playing,
remember the old
teams,
Celtics used to bring in Greg Kite.
Yes, or
just to give fouls, right? Just to take up space, maybe get a couple rebounds and give fouls. Like foul trouble, Greg Kite would always be on there.
Yeah, you had another 6'11", 7-footer to come in and at least give up 5 fouls.
They don't have
fouls.
That. So Jalen Carey in particular, and even Devin McLaughlin, those are the 2 guys that have the toughest job.
Those are only 2 bigs,
right?
That's their big.
And they both were playing really well in the first half. They were getting buckets. They're really good rebounders for their size. They battle, but they're getting a little bit worn down. And like you said, it's hard to just stay out of foul trouble. And I think the scouting report now is getting out there. Hey, if you got a big guy, take it at those guys, get them in foul trouble, wear them down. You'll get the benefit. So that's what Vanderbilt's going to have to overcome. And I agree with you, D-Mace. They look a little tired right now. They had some tired legs. They could not hit a shot in the second half. They didn't get bad looks.
No,
they were getting the same looks in the second half as the first half. They couldn't throw it in the ocean in the second half. That was disappointing.
Before we go to break, we have an important update on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com from Joey in Bellevue. Joey says, I know this is in the past, but I wanted to share this moment. I picked my son up. We stopped at the gas station, and he asked for the yellow Gatorade, referring to the lemon lime flavor. Sorry, Willie.
Yep, there we go. Once again,
you see how old wounds.
You see how new evidence they introduce new evidence.
You can't say generational on this program.
It was not the same context.
It doesn't matter.
It's an age thing.
I know.
There we go.
Okay. I know that's not what you meant by generational, but I just wanted
the younger age demographic. Let's say they don't know about.
They do know
the citrus cooler Gatorade. That's the
Willie.
Okay.
They introduce.
It's not open
new
that can
evidence.
of worms again.
New evidence to our case.
The case has been closed.
Yes. You
got your quarter point.
You have your point.
You got your quarter point.
You have your points.
You got your quarter point.
Yeah,
all right.
Because we can deduct points. You know.
No,
that,
we
right?
can't.
Well, it depends.
615-737-1025. Coming up next, what is the path to career recovery for free agent quarterbacks? What makes the perfect reclamation project when it comes to quarterbacks? We'll discuss that next. 615-737-1025. Tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt women's basketball as the Commodores take on Oklahoma with a 6 o'clock tip-off, and the pregame show will begin at 5:45. Vanderbilt women's basketball presented by Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball, coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium now through March 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets.
Happy Thursday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a goal or a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Vin Gnadonic, 1025, 1063 The Game. Nashville's best deal of the week is from Bavarian Beer House, located at Opry Mills Mall. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats. I said brats yesterday. Bring your brats to get some brats, giant pretzels, and more. And their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals and get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. So we have spent a lot of time discussing quarterbacks. We will continue to spend a lot of time discussing quarterbacks. Ben Solak of ESPN.com had a really interesting article that published this morning. His guide to finding the right reclamation quarterback in free agency. He writes, quote, "I don't think there's one cut and dried way to suddenly turn a disappointing quarterback into an acceptable starter. No specific offensive system, no clear rubric, but there are enough recent success stories to identify the ideal conditions for a quarterback revival, the reconstructing of a franchise quarterback from some other franchise's scrap heap." So a really in-depth article. He starts by talking about quarterbacks who fit this description. Number one on the list, of course, Sam Darnold. We saw what happened with Sam Darnold in Minnesota this past season. Solak also mentions Geno Smith going to the Seahawks, Baker Mayfield with the Buccaneers. He brings up Ryan Tannehill with the Tennessee Titans. He said, you might have to stretch your memory for this one, but in 2019, the Dolphins traded Tannehill to the Titans for a 4th-round pick. He was meant to be a veteran backup to the oft-injured Marcus Mariota, but ended up winning Comeback Player of the Year as he delivered 2 divisional titles as Tennessee starter. Tannehill's status as a reclamation is less cut and dried than the others. He started 88 games over 7 seasons with the Dolphins. It was never a bust the way Darnold, Smith, and Mayfield were. Tannehill was just a disappointment relative to his draft slot, the number 8 pick in 2012, but he experienced a huge leap in production in Tennessee, and that improvement bears examining. He also mentions quarterbacks who had a chance to be a successful reclamation project, but did not take that opportunity, like Carson Wentz, when Carson Wentz went to the Colts and then the Commanders, or Jameis Winston. He mentions Justin Fields, Mitch Trubisky, among others. But here's where it gets interesting, guys. Solak lists his keys to a successful quarterback reclamation. I thought we should go through these because I do think they're really interesting. Number 1, the quarterback has to actually be sort of good. That's his first key. He writes, this may seem like a silly thing to say in the beginning of a how to make a good quarterback out of a bad one breakdown, but it's actually the thing that stands out the most. Mayfield was the 1st overall pick, as was Goff. Darnold was 3rd, and Tannehill was 8th. Geno Smith was the only revitalized quarterback selected outside of the top 8, but if you remember that 2013 quarterback class, he was the 2nd off the board and a surprising draft day fall. It's fair to say Smith would have gone earlier if he were drafted in 2023, when we knew a lot more about rookie quarterback contract value. So that's the first step, according to Ben Solak, when looking for a successful reclamation project. The quarterback has to actually be
You have to have some tools. You have to have some tools. I felt good about our discussion about this after reading that, because I feel like a lot of his points are points that we spent quite a bit of time discussing with all of this. And one of the things that made me laugh when he was like, if you were sitting around last summer at the beach and said, you know what, the Vikings should, I think Sam Darnold is the guy. He's the bounce back guy. Let's get him. People would have laughed you off the beach, right? That's the point he makes in so many words. So as we're sitting here kicking around names like Daniel Jones and Mac Jones and some of the other names that we banded around, and everybody's kind of going, oh man, that guy's no good. This is the whole point of this discussion is, can you find the right guy for a small price as you kind of sort things out on your roster, which is very flawed, and get a good bang for your buck as a bounce back? That's why I am adamant. Do not try to go get this Sam Darnold. Find the next Sam Darnold. That to me would be the home run.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Each one of these guys, I think first and foremost, you have to be able to play the position at a level that, is a winning level. You got to be above average, I believe. You got to be above average, I believe, in this league. Because if you're average, you're a backup quarterback. That's essentially what an average quarterback is in this league. It's a backup quarterback. Above average guys typically are starters. So to me, you have to have that above average talent. Does Sam Darnold have that above average talent? Because he's the biggest name that will hit free agency other than Aaron Rodgers. And we know Aaron Rodgers' talent is above average. He has a great talent. It may diminishing, but he's a guy that can win you games. So Sam Darnold is the biggest fish in the pond right now. But I consider him mediocre. Based upon his career, I consider him mediocre. So that's not above average. Can he win you a few games here and there? Yeah, he showed in Minnesota. But is that more so a product of the environment, or is that who he is going to be moving forward? Geno Smith is the same thing. Was that one? People thought that was just a one-off with Geno Smith. But then actually he started to play. But with Geno Smith, this was the key point in that. He stayed with the same team. When he got to Seattle, he started to get better. It ain't like he got to Seattle, he had a great season and then he went somewhere else.
I believe
he stayed within
the
system.
By the way, that Solak makes in this article later, the fact that with Sam Darnold, assuming Sam Darnold goes to another team, he had that breakout season with the Vikings. Will he be able to replicate it somewhere else?
And I think he does a good job of laying out how or what helps a guy with a bounce back. And that is, in most cases, a good team around him. He talks about Tannehill having A.J. Brown. This is, again, something we've discussed quite extensively. Geno Smith is so unique in that he went away for a long time and then bounced back. But as you said, D-Mace, 3 straight years of good, steady quarterback play for a good price. This is the key to the whole thing, is what are you paying for that? Baker Mayfield, let's not forget, he was cast off by the Browns, crashed and burned again for the Panthers, then went over and showed up, with his suitcase and saying, I'll play quarterback when the Rams had nobody to play quarterback. Remember that?
He did pretty good.
And did okay for a couple games. But the Buccaneers got him for peanuts. And then he was a fit. And they're like, okay, now let's pay him and set him at the right price. But all of these reclamation projects, right, who succeeded had A, good physical tools, and B, a pretty good surrounding support system, at least on some level.
Yeah, so the number one step, according to Ben Solak, the quarterback has to actually be sort of good. And he mentions that draft capital, although imperfect, is still a predictive measure of a player's NFL future. First rounders are more likely to succeed than second rounders, and second rounders relative to third rounders, and so on. He also mentions one thing we can say with confidence is Darnold, Goff, and Tannehill remain notoriously impressive throwers of the football, even at the lowest points of their careers in New York, LA, and Miami, respectively. There was something there, the ever-present potential in a draft pick who never developed, which brings us to point number 2. Pay attention to the previous stops. You mentioned Geno Smith. Ben Solak brings up Geno Smith. He also brings up, Baker Mayfield in this. He writes about Geno Smith. Smith's career in New York was plagued by locker room drama. Some of those issues were of the quarterback's making, but they're not exonerated from their role in the team's collective failure. But if there was something still uncovered in their respective games, it's more likely teams like the Browns and the Jets would have failed to find it. So you mentioned Smith and his time in Seattle. Ben Solak brings that up as well. He also mentions the Goff situation initially looks like a counterpoint here. The Rams are a sharp team, but it's actually a perfect look at the process. In the first half of the McVay-Goff partnership, McVay proved that it could be done with Goff, that great scheming could minimize the flaws of a pocket passer prone to high-risk throws while maximizing his delightful arm talent. When the McVay-Goff relationship crumbled and the Lions looked into resuscitating Goff's career, they weren't betting on an unsuccessful player from a bad team. Rather, they were hoping to replicate the fleeting success of that sharp team on a longer, more dependable arc.
The Goff trade was a huge success for the Lions,
for both teams,
and the Rams got the ring that they were looking for. So it was a good trade for both. But the Lions are still set up for years now. I just looked at the salary cap because this was a big news bulletin, kind of like the NHL. The post-COVID math has been done. The bills have been paid from the years that you couldn't have fans. And now there is a big bump in the salary cap. So the Lions, with all of this talent they have, they also still have really good salary cap flexibility right now. So that Goff trade set them up in so many different ways.
And that's more so, the ideal of getting a guy like that. You hope it works out the way it has worked out for Jared Goff, and even to some extent, not Sam Bradford, but Stafford. Even though Stafford, he was playing consistent ball, he just needs to sort of revitalize his career in regards to his legacy moving forward. Now he has that Super Bowl underneath his belt. But to me, I believe, because we've seen both sides of the coin, where a guy has a great season, one great season, then he goes off to another team and it doesn't work quite as well, or even at all, that it did at his previous prior to coming there. Will Sam Darnold be that type of guy? Whereas, yes, he was great for Minnesota, and had he stayed at Minnesota, he probably would have had the same type numbers and the same type play. But now you're putting him on a whole different team, possibly a whole different scheme. And if it is sort of the same scheme, the terminology is a little bit different, and the guys you have on the outside is a lot different from what you had at Minnesota. So not only is it just got a guy revitalizing his career, it's, does he have an opportunity to continue that success with the same team? It's all about being familiar with your surroundings. And if I had a good season with one team, I'm trying to stay there to have that same type season. I'm not trying to go somewhere else, because now, which we're going to talk about too, now the pressure amps up. What do you do then?
615-737-1025. We'll continue our step-by-step breakdown here of how to build the right reclamation quarterback. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. Let's go to our phone line driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Mike is in Gallatin. Mike, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
His concern or worry with Sam Darnold is so much that he was not so much a reclamation project, more so that he got blessed by his surroundings. I mean, you had the best wide receiver in the NFL and arguably another wide receiver one on some teams in Addison. That Aaron Jones trade for the Vikings proved to be really well, and then a top 10 offensive line as well. My question is, do you guys think, again, I'm not telling you that he could put the same numbers up, but if Will Levis was the starting quarterback for the Vikings, would he have been able to put up a number that would allow him to keep a job there? Because I just don't know if we could grab the next quote-unquote Sam Darnold and get that kind of results, because we just don't have the pieces that the Vikings had. So again, the fact that they were able to make the playoffs, it's just amazing kind of what plugging in a semi-capable quarterback could do for the team.
Thank you for calling.
Good lead
Mike.
into a point you were about to make.
Yes, we're actually going to skip point number 3. We'll go back to number 3 because number 4, I think, answers Mike's question. Great coaching definitely helps, but great wide receiver play might be more important. Ben Solak of ESPN writes, quote, "There is no doubt that great offensive design and play calling assist quarterback reclamation, but I would argue it helps in the way that a rising tide lifts all boats. Having a good offensive coordinator just helps, independent of the exact problem under the microscope. I'm sure if I were writing about offensive linemen who have recovered their careers in new spots, I'd come to the same conclusion. Good offensive coaching is, well, good. What does stand out, especially between the successful reclamation projects and the failed ones, are the differences in wide receiver play. When Tannehill got the start in Tennessee, he was throwing to A.J. Brown.
And Corey Davis was pretty good, and Jonnu Smith.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, he had a pretty good running back.
He did.
Derrick Henry. Yeah.
Pretty good running back that moved people up in the box and maybe gave you a little more space to work with when you were throwing the ball.
Solak also mentions Mayfield in Tampa Bay through to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Darnold in Minnesota through to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Geno Smith in Seattle through to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Goff didn't get an elite pass catcher until Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out, but he was also a big part in St. Brown's rapid emergence. He contrasts that with some other failed reclamation projects like Carson Wentz in Indianapolis having Michael Pittman Jr., a solid receiver, but not in the same class of the receivers we just mentioned. Solak summarizes, it's hard for a quarterback to suddenly improve his production and then sustain that spark into a consistent flame without a truly dominant receiver.
And he uses, and you'll appreciate this, Adam, being somebody who watches Saints as closely as you do. And D-Mace, I think you would hit this too. One of the reasons maybe that Jameis Winston hasn't done well in his second, third spots, he hasn't had a really good surrounding cast. He's been on some teams that had some issues, right? He hasn't had that really good. Well, like
he had Mike Evans for.
I'm saying after he crashed and burned.
Yeah.
When he went to New Orleans.
Yeah, he didn't have
right.
Anyway.
So New Orleans and Cleveland, he didn't have that guy. Like I wonder what Winston would have looked like with the Vikings. Let's just say just drop him in with the Vikings,
you're right.
with Jefferson, with Aaron Jones and T.J. Hawkinson, and that's support system. What would their record have been? I don't know if it would have been 14-3, but I think he would have had a lot more success.
Here's the thing. Speaking from a sort of a wide receiver standpoint, the wide receiver translator, here it is. One can't live without the other. That's just the way it is. You can try to skew it one way with an article, either way, whether you're saying it's critical that they have an offensive coordinator or it's critical that they have a bona fide receiver. What I am telling you, one can't live without the other. Ask McLaurin 2 years ago when he had the system was there. You had a system. Sam Howell was doing what he needed to do. The system was there, but you didn't have it. The scheme wasn't being ran the way that it needed to be run in order to maximize, say, McLaurin. Tom Brady did it for years. He didn't have no bona fide receiver other than Randy Moss that 1 year. But
and that was unique. He was sort of
Exactly.
cast off from the Raiders, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely.
He was getting fined and he was kind of getting in trouble.
And he came there as a reclamation sort of to
Yeah,
himself.
exactly.
So, but I get it. They had Gronk. I understand that. But the system can't work without a bona fide guy, and that bona fide guy can't work if he doesn't have the system that gets him open. Why do you think a lot of these guys, I gotta get out of here. I gotta go to another system. Why? Because they feel this system isn't operating the way that is conducive for them to have a good season. Why do you think wide receivers get mad when they ain't touching the ball? It's not because they're not great. It's because the system that they're in isn't allowing them to be great. So to me, I think one works off of the other. If you have a great system, but not a great wide receiver, yeah, you'll have some success, Tom Brady, but you can have more. He had a lot of success when Randy Moss came on board, and he had the system. You know, Randy broke the receiving record in touchdowns, I believe, and Tom Brady had his records that year as well. So I think in order for you to have a good, really good offense, I think one works off the other. To me, if you have one, yeah, sometimes it may work without having the other. But if you want to maximize it, you need both in this. But I would rather have a damn good system rather than a bona fide number one guy. Because just like quarterbacks, everybody doesn't have that number one guy. But if I have a damn good system, I can get those guys open.
Mark is in Nashville on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mark, my friend, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, how's it going, fellas? Y'all do know it's cold out here today, right?
It's a little chilly.
It ain't cold. It's cold.
I feel like I'm in a freezer right now waiting on y'all, man.
Are you at an old payphone outside or something? What's going on,
Listen,
Mark?
you can't spoil. So there you go. You're in the freezer. You can't spoil, man.
Man, you right about that, D-Mace. But, man, a man can sure get cold in here, though, man. Good gracious.
What you got, Mark?
But, hey, a couple of things real quick. What you were saying, D-Mace, about Sam Darnold, I wouldn't take Sam Darnold either, man. I think he's a system guy. He did have a lot of elements around him with Jefferson and Addison and great offensive line, like the guy Mike said. I don't think he would come down here and serve the purpose for the Titans well at all. I just know Kevin O'Connell's a great coach. He's a guru. But I just don't think that would work. And the other day when y'all were talking about Carr, has an association with Callahan. Basically runs the same type of offense that Gruden done. So tell me if I'm right or wrong, D-Mace. It's the West Coast version. Am I right or wrong?
Excuse me. I think you may be right. I need to check that. But I'm sure he would be familiar with the system that Callahan is running. Seeming they spent time together.
And see Callahan, man, he needs a veteran to come in. He can't ride with a rookie. You know, no offense to what I was saying the other day about Quinn Ewers, but it's not about that. He needs a veteran. This guy cannot start the season off 2-5, 2-6. He's done. He's got to have a veteran guy to come in there. And Carr would be a good fit. I don't know if that's the way they go, but like you said, you could stick Aaron Rodgers in that offense for the Vikings. They're still gonna make the playoffs. I mean, you could do that and they
Mark,
still make the playoffs.
This is a good point you're bringing up, Mark, because I think a guy like Carr might be the best thing for Brian Callahan, possibly. Let's just make that argument, right? But you're gonna have to pay him more, and he's probably gonna win a few more games than you would if you took a complete true bounce back. Like, you don't know what you're getting. It's a guy whose stock is low, like Darnold was.
Carr wouldn't be a reclamation project.
No, not at all. He's more of a known. If you look at his consistency, you kind of know what you're getting from Carr. You don't know what you're going to get from Daniel Jones, Mac Jones. Let's go down the list. There's a bunch of them. Even Justin Fields. But I guess my point in the big picture that has to be discussed, and it may not be a good thing for Brian Callahan, but what is the best way back to being a really good team? It might be picking really high again next year, as much as it would be hard to sit through another season where you don't win. I mean, if that's worst case scenario, that may be okay. You know, I might be willing to roll the dice and say, if I get the bounce back reclamation for a for a small price and I hit on that, great. That helps my goal of getting back. Having Derek Carr and getting back to 7-10 or 8-9, does that really help you in the long term? Like when that new stadium opens, like where you're going to be? Like I don't. What is better for the health of the roster in the long term when that stadium opens? You see what I'm saying?
Willie, Willie, that would at least get them back to respectability if they could go 8-10, or if they could go 9-9 or whatever. That would at least help them get back to respectability.
You're right,
but
it's also kind of mediocre.
Yeah, it is. It is. But Callahan can't afford to go 2-5, 2-6.
You're right.
Willie.
If you're Callahan's agent, I can see your argument in a big way.
Yeah. But before I go, I want to address something from the other day. See, I keep receipts, so I'm going to have to address this before I go.
All right, make it quick, Mark. We got to get out of here.
I am. The other day, it was brought up that I was BSing. Adam, I like you, man. I don't BS about anything. I come with facts. D-Mace, Adam, Willie, y'all know how I am. So if I didn't mean to make you get sensitive about the situation, and I meant nothing toward Quinn Ewers, but that ain't what they need. And I can agree to disagree, just like you can agree to disagree with me, Adam. But I like you, man. So just quit being a little sensitive about it, man. Just accept it.
I think you're referring to Adam in Portland.
Yeah, it was Adam in Portland,
me.
not you, Adam.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, I like Adam, just like I like the Adam I'm talking to. I like Willie. Love y'all both, all y'all. If I'm wrong,
hey, what about me?
If y'all disagree,
what about
I love you, D-Mate.
Even though we left you out in the cold.
Exactly.
We left you out in the cold, though.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'm going here and get my bomber and put it on. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank y'all, though, man.
Thank you, Mark.
Go get warm, Mark.
You too.
I'm picturing Mark at an old style payphone out in the wind, and the breeze is just hanging on. Like they don't. When's the last time you used a payphone? Do they even have those anymore?
Mark found one. I guess.
Mark said he was calling. Was he calling from outside?
Yeah. When did the movie Phone Booth with Colin Farrell come out?
Ooh,
that was
man.
the last time.
Oh man,
I thought about
2000s.
a phone booth. Yes, that was a while ago. 615-737-1025. We'll continue this discussion on reclamation project quarterbacks coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Ving at 1025, 1063. The Game.
All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. They're the leader in quickly converting home equity into cold hard cash. If you're a homeowner, the average homeowner has over $300,000 in equity, so you can utilize that if you need it. And if you've got projects like paying off credit card bills or car loans or personal loans, you can get that money from your home's equity in less than a week. Loan Pronto is the leader in getting that money converted into cold hard cash so you can use it. One client got $150,000 out, paid off the credit cards, a car loan, and a personal loan, and in the meantime, cut their monthly expenses by $1,500. Get approved in as little as 1 day with no hard credit pull. Call Loan Pronto right now, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Get that money you need. Equal housing lender. NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D. Mace, Vin, Ginadonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL Insider, will join us at the top of the 1 o'clock hour to preview the Four Nations Face-Off final, the U.S. against Canada tonight, puck drop at 7 o'clock. But before we get there, we're going to continue our conversation on the keys to a successful quarterback reclamation, according to Ben Solak of ESPN.com. So quickly, here are the points that he says are critical to finding these quarterbacks and making them successful. 1, the quarterback has to actually be sort of good. 2, pay attention to the previous stops. I'm going to skip to 4 because we haven't discussed 3. 4, great coaching definitely helps, but great wide receiver play might be more important. Number 3, which we skipped, was low expectations are great. And Solak mentions as the opposite example of Carson Wentz going from Philadelphia to Indianapolis. He got there. There were extremely high stakes. Frank Reich was coaching for his job. Wentz was trying to prove he could reclaim his near MVP form that he had with the Eagles. We remember that season. It was bad across the board, and they got rid of him. It also didn't work in Washington for Carson Wentz either. The opposite is with Jared Goff, because remember, Jared Goff was seen as a throw-in in that trade with the Rams. The Rams got Matthew Stafford. I believe the Lions got some first-round picks out of that. Oh, and by the way, here's Jared Goff, so you have somebody to play. And Jared Goff, 0 expectations, following up behind a franchise legend in Matthew Stafford, and look where Jared Goff is right now. So low expectations are great. That's point number 3 out of 4. So with all of those pieces of information, Ben Solak looks at which free agent quarterbacks could be next. Which free agent quarterbacks could be that next successful reclamation project? He starts, of course, with Sam Darnold. And this is what he writes about Sam Darnold. And he brings up a point, Derek, that you brought up about Geno Smith earlier in the show. Ben Solak writes, quote, Darnold is the obvious case, and he could be well on his way to establishing himself as a reliable starter. The problem, he'll likely have to switch teams, unlike those quarterbacks who got to enjoy team stability after a successful season with their new franchise, though they did endure coaching changes. The issue of high expectations may be the danger for Darnold. If he signs a big multi-year contract with a team in need of a savior, I'm looking at the Raiders or Steelers, he'll lose the long, generous leash afforded to many of the successful reclamations. But he already had one huge, highly productive year of confidence building in Minnesota. So perhaps he has already reached escape velocity, or at least gotten close enough to it that he'll break the pull of mediocrity's gravity at his next stop. But the other question I had for you as well, gentlemen, is with that point about low expectations are great. A quarterback that signs with the Tennessee Titans is coming into a situation with low expectations built in, right? I mean, how much do you factor that into it when you're discussing these quarterbacks?
It's not, when you think of low expectations, it's not low expectations of the team. It's low expectation of the guy that is coming into the situation. I'm going to go back quickly to 4.
The wide receiver play.
Yeah. Listen, why do you think these guru offensive coordinators are being hired? These young ones. Why? Because these owners are thinking, man, I got to have someone to put a good system in play. And hopefully that system matches the players that we have. They don't never say, man, I got this great player, I need to match him with the system. It's no, I got to go out and get that young, innovative mind that is going to be able to take our talent to the next level or get our talent jump started. So it's not about the guy. It's not about the guy on the field. Sometimes it's the guy on the sideline. That's why they're going out and getting these young phenoms, these young guys that have shown that they can call plays. They're going out and get them and making them head coaches now. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up in regards to number 4. Number 3 is, it's not necessarily the low expectation of the team, because I don't think Sam Darnold coming in here saying, oh man, yeah, this is a team that's going to be, fighting for a playoff spot or fighting for an opportunity to get in the Super Bowl. The expectation is the quarterback Now, last year, the expectation for Darnold was, hey, okay, JJ McCarthy's not playing, throw Darnold in there. And don't nobody know. Everybody's like, oh, we're going to get the same old Darnold more than likely. They're not going to make it to the playoffs. So he's going about his business. Like, nobody's expecting big things. And all of a sudden, he starts doing well. Now you go to the next team, the expectations for you are no longer low. They may still be, as a whole for the team, we're not expected to be if you just look at the roster, we're not expected to be a team that's competing for a Super Bowl. But if you bring in a Darnold and you're paying him $40 million, the expectation is for Darnold now to get you to a place where at the end of the season, you're going to be fighting for a playoff spot. That's not about the team. That's about Sam Darnold.
History is full in all sports of players that have a really good year in a year where they are up for a new contract. And I do not subscribe to the theory of, well, he's in a contract year, he's going to play harder. No, he happens to be in the right place in his career to have his best season. And when that happens, you cash in accordingly, as you should. But you can go to hockey, baseball, basketball, football, and make a large list of players that were fairly ordinary, that had a career year in the right year, cashed in, and then their new team found out that they were really just the same. They were the player they were their entirety of their careers, not just in the most recent year. I fear that will be the case with Darnold.
And that's what a team like the Titans, they can't afford to get. They can't afford
especially with their roster where it is.
Pay the money that they're going to have to pay for him to regress back to who he truly is. He's not the Sam Darnold. And I think everybody can agree at this point, he's not the Sam Darnold that played last year. He may be more so in the middle. Now, are you okay with a guy being, again, mediocre? That's what he is, at least to me, because he hasn't shown anything other than this one season. And I'm not going with this recency bias sort of stuff. I'm looking at his season as his career in its totality. He is a mediocre quarterback. So if you're the Titans, do you want to bring that on? Are you bringing on mediocre quarterback, or are you bringing on a guy you believe can uplift your franchise? Is Sam Darnold a guy that can uplift your franchise? That's the question you need to be asking.
Some of the other quarterbacks that Ben Solak thinks could be successful reclamation projects, there are some interesting names in here. He mentions Justin Fields. He writes about Justin Fields. He had an opportunity to immediately resuscitate his career in his first season away from the Bears and their cursed quarterback room, yet he was entirely unspectacular. But given what we've seen from successful and unsuccessful reclamation projects, that doesn't worry me much. The Steelers did not have a good offensive nucleus, and Fields did not have a long leash with Russell Wilson waiting in the wings. It is worth noting that none of the successful reclamations has been a dual threat quarterback, so the waters are a little uncharted. But Fields is still a qualifying candidate of physical talent and inept rookie upbringing in need of an actually dominant receiver and low expectations.
Okay, so with that in mind, we did this ranking one day.
Yes.
Where we had 6 quarterbacks we were going through, and Fields was one of them. I had Fields at the top of my list. But listening to that, and also thinking about the match of what Callahan's system is, I'm a little, I might need to backtrack, because I love the idea of Fields at the stage of the career he's in. You hope that he's learning things each year, and that will prevent him from making the same mistakes. And if he can cut down on that, his physical gifts, you hope, would give you a chance to really, blossom into the talent that they think he is. I mean, this guy has had a 1,000-yard rushing season, right? A couple years ago, he was red hot. I had him on my fantasy team. I picked him up in fantasy points. Like, he was producing.
Yeah.
The problem was it wasn't turning into wins, and he did make a lot of key mistakes at key times. But is he a fit for Callahan's system? Would you be concerned about that? The way he wants to get the ball out quick and all of those things?
Yeah, and that hasn't been his style, in Chicago nor in Pittsburgh. That wasn't his brand of play. That wasn't the system. So, you would think, can he operate in a system that forces him or wants you to get rid of the ball quickly, read it and quickly assess it and read it and throw the football. I'm not saying that he can't do it. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But would you rather have him or someone that has already been in the system, like which the one you have, Brian Callahan? So again, I'm not saying Fields couldn't do it. I think if he showed that he can go from Chicago to Pittsburgh and pick up on Pittsburgh's offense, and he did a pretty good job. He wasn't great, obviously, but he did a pretty good job. But again, to me, at this point, that's mediocre quarterbacking, but you're not bringing it at the price that Sam Darnold would come. I would rather pay $12 million for that guy, and he's mediocre, rather than to pay $40 million for this guy, and he's no better than the guy I'm paying $12 million to.
Daniel Jones is also on this list. Ben Solak writes, as every Vikings fan already knows, Jones, who was acquired in November after being released by the Giants, could be the next Darnold. Jones bears plenty of similarities to Darnold, and if he re-signs with Minnesota, he'll be behind J.J. McCarthy, the first-round pick who missed his entire rookie season. He labored on a bad franchise in New York, is about to get his first break from starting, and has been an excellent offensive incubator in Minnesota. I'd argue the key difference is arm talent. Jones never made the throws with the Giants that Darnold did with the Jets, and weirdly, expectations are different as well. If Jones has to start for an extended period of time, the Vikings will subconsciously expect Darnold-esque production, a lofty bar for any QB2, even if it just happened. But if Jones ends up a midseason trade to a team instead of need of a bridge starter or competing for a starting job in 2026, my ears will prick up.
I'm curious if Daniel Jones is sitting there watching the landscape and saying, okay, look, I've learned enough about the Vikings. Maybe I like the Vikings vibe. And presuming that Darnold goes, you say, yeah, I'll play alongside of McCarthy. This could be a really good opportunity. Or does Daniel Jones say, I really want to start. I want to go somewhere else where I could be the guy? Like, what would you choose? Because if he could be an insurance from the Vikings end, he's a cheap, in theory, he could be a cheap insurance policy for McCarthy, right? But if I'm Daniel Jones, do I want to be an insurance policy, or am I still looking at this stage of my career to go somewhere where I could be a starter and bounce back and prove that I belong in the league as a starter?
Well, he doesn't have the luxury to think that way. He doesn't. That's just the way it is. Because of what we saw last on his resume, he's not in a position to say, well, nah, I'm a holdout for this team or this team. No, you just want to get a starting job. No matter how it comes your way, you want to get the starting job. Even if it's, you may only be the starter for 8 games, but more than likely, once this rookie comes back and he shows that he's ready to go, we're going to say, okay, well, let me play the best 8 games of my life. Because you know who else that did? Who else it helped? Matt Flynn. Matt Flynn came in for 5-7 games and did a great job. And he was paid a lot of money to go to Seattle. And ultimately, he wasn't even a starter the next following season for Seattle. It was Russell Wilson. So if it's only 8 games and I'm Daniel Jones and they're telling me, hey, listen, more than likely you'll start the season off, but as soon as J.J. McCarthy gets ready and we feel he's ready to go, it's his job. I'm like, all right, I take it. But I'm going to prove to you in those 8 games, I'm going to make it hard for you to put him in that space. And if you still want to put him in that space, at least I help myself. Now the last picture everyone has of me is me leading a Minnesota Vikings team. They're not looking at me, when I was with the Giants. They're not looking at that. So if I'm Daniel Jones, I'm taking the job.
Steven is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Steven, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hello, man. Great show.
Thank you.
I was just going to touch base. You guys are touching base on all of it, but I wanted to just give a scenario, just like the Titans years ago when they got Tannehill for a bargain because nobody else really wanted. But the 28 to 34-year-old quarterbacks, there's a trash heap of them out there. But when Sam Darnold hits the skillet hot, like they say, you don't really want to give him a $40 or $50 million. Just like Bryce Young, don't you guys think in 2 years with the right team, he's going to all of a sudden be great when the Carolina Panthers are going to get rid of him? It's just like Fields and Lance. Anthony Richardson for the Colts in a couple of years, they're going to be like, well, our project didn't work. And at 28 years old, he's going to blossom somewhere because they've got a good team, a good roster. They've built it, and all they need is that. And they're going to get him for $15 million probably or something like that. Now they can afford to put all those other pieces around him. Look at Dak Prescott, look at Watson in Cleveland, all these people that have made Trevor Lawrence, these $50, $60 million quarterbacks that really can't do it. And the teams are going to struggle to put the pieces around them. And everybody seems to be talking about, well, what's the next rookie? Who's the next 20? A 21-year-old man is not the same as a 28-year-old man, in my view. Mahomes, look at the Super Bowl. I don't even think the Eagles think that Hurts is that great. That interception he threw, if they'd have lost that game 19-16, they would be saying he's not the right guy when he threw that interception on the 3-yard line to nobody. But since they roll and they've got clearly the best team on the field, they can all they need is a quarterback that ranks 15th in the league.
Thanks for the call, Steven.
I hadn't thought about this, but maybe if the Titans are really doing their research, part of the research probably should be who are future quarterbacks that might hit the market, and how do we compare those guys to the ones that are immediately available right now. I do think that's sound thinking 2 years ahead, 3 years ahead. Again, this is not good for Brian Callahan, but it might be but it's probably what you have to do to really think about how do we best and quickliest, most efficiently build a really good roster, because they're far from it right now.
615-737-1025. We'll wrap up this conversation next with this question. Are the Titans a team that can give one of these reclamation project quarterbacks the right environment to blossom? We'll answer that question next, but before we do, tune into 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders take on Louisiana Tech at the Murphy Center. Tip-off is at 8. Pre-game beginning at 7:30. Coverage is also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at TotallyHitsNashville.com.
All right, let's talk Lee Company, proud sponsor of our Nashville Predators radio coverage, which will resume on Saturday night in Smashville with the Avalanche coming to town. Let's hope Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon get a good, solid workout tonight in this huge game that's going on between the USA and Canada for the Four Nations Championship in Boston. And it'll be fun to get the whole gang back together and see what the Predators can bring to the table down the stretch here. In the meantime, Lee Company continues to serve. It's frigid temperatures right now. Our heat was running really well. We used our contacts at Lee Company to help us get the right furnace for our home. And we thought ahead of the time in the summer and in the fall. That's when we put it in. Had a great experience with Lee Company. It's running really, really well right now. Knock on wood, of course, but it's brand new. It's really good. These people can really help you with the decisions you have to make as a homeowner with heating, cooling, plumbing, and electric, general maintenance. They've got it all covered. Lee Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators. Here's how you get in touch with them. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, wrapping up our conversation about quarterback reclamation projects. We've gone through all of the steps as presented by Ben Solak of ESPN.com about the keys to a successful quarterback reclamation. The number one question, of course, as it relates to the Tennessee Titans, are they the right environment? Are they the right team for one of those reclamation quarterbacks to thrive on their second or maybe third opportunities? According to Ben Solak, the answer is no. He writes, Calvin Ridley comes in below my bar of elite enough wide receiver to save a floundering quarterback, and the Titans will either draft a quarterback first overall, putting ridiculous pressure on a veteran QB1 to hold the starting job, or pass on a quarterback with the top pick, putting ridiculous pressure on a veteran QB1 to make that decision not look terrible. The Titans changed GMs in 2023, head coaches in 2024, and GMs again in 2025. I'd let them figure things out before I hitched my wagon there.
You know, he doesn't really mention Callahan in there. That's if I'm Brian Callahan, I'd be looking and go, wait, what about me? I was brought in to be the guru to quarterbacks and set up a system where a quarterback can thrive, and things like that. So that's an interesting omission.
But remember, in his point about great coaching definitely helps, but great wide receiver play might be more important.
Right. That's a fair point about Ridley. I think we all would see that they've invested a lot in Ridley, and he's only been decent. However, he was playing with the worst quarterbacks as a tandem of any team in the league outside of Cleveland. And even when Jameis Winston was throwing the football, they probably had some more. There was one game, was it Monday night or Thursday night against Denver, where Jameis Winston threw for like 500 yards. Like they had the game in the snow in Pittsburgh. Like they had at least a few games. They're not a whole. You see what I'm saying? Like
I get.
If Ridley had a better quarterback, Ridley's numbers would probably look a little bit better.
Okay. I'm gonna say this, and the Titans may not be the ideal spot for, say, a Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold's in a peculiar situation because it's like, okay, do I push to stay in Minnesota where I know I will have some success? I know my surroundings, or do I dread, going out to deeper waters where I don't know exactly my surroundings? But I'm a hell of a swimmer, but I still don't know my surroundings. Which one do I want to take? You figure some would say, well, I know my surroundings here in Minnesota, and I'm a great swimmer. I'm a good swimmer, so I'm going to stay here because it's going to enhance me as a quarterback. I'm not sure that Sam Darnold, his first choice probably would be to come to a place like Tennessee. Because whereas, you may view him as a good quarterback, but you don't view the Titans roster as a good roster. And do you view him good enough to uplift your roster? If you don't feel he's good enough to uplift the guys that you have on your roster right now from an offensive standpoint, then I'm not paying him $40-45 million. I'm just not doing that. If I'm paying him $40-45 million, he needs to uplift my franchise. But I don't think Darnold is at that space. Now, the Titans may choose to do it anyway. I don't know. But if that is indeed the case, then, if I'm Darnold, I'm trying my best to stay put where I'm at. The Titans, like you said, the Titans are in a situation where they don't have much in the cupboard. And do you bring on a guy that you got to pay $40-45 million to and try to build your cupboard? Or do you bring in a guy that you could pay $15 million, $20 million, or take on an existing contract that may be more palatable for your team and go draft you a young quarterback, and then try to build your roster around that, knowing that he's only a bridge quarterback?
This is why I am on the side of bringing in a bridge quarterback, someone who, if he struggles on this team, it's not a huge deal because of some of the reasons that Ben Solak lists about why the Titans aren't a great destination for a reclamation project quarterback. I just don't see the Titans being that environment where Sam Darnold, most likely, if he had left, he was with the 49ers, correct? Before he signed with the Vikings. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
If he had left the 49ers and signed with the Titans, would we be having the same conversations about Sam Darnold? Probably not. So I wouldn't want to take a chance on paying someone big money and having that happen here. I mean, and having them fail here. And that's why I'm also not as excited about drafting a quarterback, because I would want to see the Titans, as Ben Solak says, figure things out.
Well, how else are they going to figure it out if they don't either bring in a guy or draft a guy? You would never figure it out unless you try to solve the problem.
Yeah, if the environment is not good for a bounce back, it's certainly not good for the first overall pick as a quarterback, a rookie. That's even worse to put that guy in there. So that's why I'm willing to have a bad year if that's what it takes. I'm not saying I'm tanking or anything like that, but I'm willing to experiment.
But is
I'm
that
willing
good for Brian Callahan?
I can't worry about that. And I'm hoping that they see that and be fair to Brian Callahan of what they give him to work with. I think Brian Callahan, I could be in the minority. I think he is a sharp guy. I think he knows football. I think he will get better on Sundays. But I think for a guy his age and his experience level and the turmoil he got put there, I think he will learn from that. And I think he will be a good head coach if given the chance, if given the right weapons to succeed. And right now, I see no scenario, no matter what they do, that gets them anything better than mediocre next year anyway. So let's find the best way, efficient way to build a truly good roster. It might take, it's going to take another year.
I was looking at the teams that Solak lists that do qualify as places where these reclamation quarterbacks can thrive. Minnesota obviously is one because we just saw it. I thought this was interesting. He mentions the New York Giants as a team. And here's what he wrote about the Giants. If you squint hard enough, the Giants might actually be a good spot for a veteran quarterback to get a solid bump. Daniel Jones crumbled under the weight of expectations. But with no expectations, a bridge passer could excel throwing to Malik Neighbors with Brian Daboll calling the plays. Don't ask me about the offensive line. The counterpoint, it's hard to imagine the Giants definitely navigating a tense situation between a veteran passer and an early drafted rookie with a fan base voracious for elite quarterback play. If I were Fields, I'd look at that 2022 season when Daboll made Jones look functional in the designed running game and wonder how I can get in on that. Daboll was in Buffalo for the conversion of Josh Allen from woefully inaccurate to suddenly stellar passer, and he likely has a wealth of play designs and philosophies for working with a highly mobile but inconsistent passer. Remember, the Giants clearly want to draft a quarterback in April, but they have the number 3 pick in what largely looks like a 2-quarterback race at this point.
I mean, getting Darnold, I could see that being a fit for Sam Darnold, the Giants. But make no mistake, when you talk about the expectations, going to New York and a quarterback, the expectations are always high, especially if you're a starting quarterback and they're bringing you in and they're paying you $40+ million. There's no way on God's green earth that ain't pressure. So I would kind of, take that one out. There's going to be pressure for him as a starting quarterback in New York, considering what they've had at the quarterback position since Eli Manning chose to retire. Even Eli Manning's last year wasn't great. But it would be a situation where you go in, it checks all the boxes in the
It's going to have to be like the secret word on Pee-wee's Playhouse.
When you say that, you gotta put a quarter into the jar. We got to get a quarter jar.
Okay, so we need a sound effect of a quarter hitting a jar or like a laser zap. Like we need a sound effect. If you violate the banned phrase list.
I'm thinking of when
I'll work on that.
I'm thinking of when someone said the secret word on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Like that's what it might have. That's what it might have to be.
It covers all your bases.
Okay.
In regards to what you are looking for with the team. You believe in you think Daboll has a good system.
You're talking about the Giants.
The Giants.
Okay.
So the system's there, and they have a bona fide young receiver.
You got a dog.
And Neighbors. Exactly.
At
so
receiver, I should say.
If you're looking at, if you're looking at what would help a reclamation project, wouldn't you think, at least on paper, that the Giants would be a place he would want to go?
Here's another team that's on here that I thought was interesting. The Atlanta Falcons.
No.
Solak mentions if there's no starting job available for Jameis Winston or Daniel Jones, the QB2 spot on Atlanta's roster looks promising. Drake London is a great receiver. Does he clear the elite bar? Jury's still out. Michael Penix Jr. is coming off a rookie season and has yet to prove he belongs. Though early returns are promising, he has injury history. The potential for grabbing snaps is high, and the bar for veteran quarterback play in Atlanta, which most recently watched Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke, and Kirk Cousins, is extremely low.
What I would say is this. If you don't want the weather to be a problem,
you got a dome.
Then you got a dome, and you play in Tampa,
twice, and New Orleans,
and New Orleans in the dome. So hell, you're playing half of your season in good weather or the dome. That may help you out as a quarterback, Justin Fields. That may help you out as a quarterback because you're not playing in Chicago where the weather is bad, in Pittsburgh where the weather is bad once you get past a certain point. No, at least half of your games will be in good weather, ideal weather, other than it may be raining one of those times in Tampa. But other than that, you're playing in ideal situations in regards to the weather. So looking at that could be an added plus too.
615-737-1025. We'll park our quarterback conversation here for a little bit. But coming up next, we were watching this during the break. We're going to watch it during this break because we paused it. PK Subban had some fiery comments the other day about the Four Nations face-off versus the NBA. It's led to a lot of dialogue. We will discuss that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet NHL Insider, will join us in the next segment to preview the Four Nations face-off, the final tonight, the U.S. against Canada in Boston, 7 o'clock puck drop. By the way, don't change that dial, because at the end of this segment, I will be giving away a pair of tickets to see the Predators take on the Avalanche on Saturday at 5 o'clock at Bridgestone Arena. I will give you the cue to call at the end of this segment, so hang tight. But yesterday, gentlemen, we played a clip of PK Subban on ESPN. ESPN carrying the final for the Four Nations face-off tournament. PK Subban all over ESPN, previewing the game. And he had some strong comments comparing the NHL and the NBA. The NBA has come under fire recently for its less than enthusiastic All-Star weekend, would be one way of putting it.
Yes.
And during the break, we were listening to PK Subban. He's on First Take, defending his take. And here are some of the pull quotes, because the clip that he had yesterday, it's a little long. So I will take the pull quotes. He said, this is PK Subban, quote, "You can step on an NBA floor and go through the motions. You can't do that in hockey," end quote. And it's led to this gigantic debate about the NBA versus the NHL, the team aspect of the NHL versus more of the individuality of the NBA. And the central question that PK Subban had for the panelists on First Take, and you could tell as he was talking, Stephen A. Smith, you could see the smoke coming out of his ears, not literally, of course, but he was getting heated. The question that PK Subban had for those defending the NBA, and more specifically the NBA players that have been taking the criticism, are you leaving the league better than you found it? That's the big point that PK Subban is making. But gentlemen, it's just the success of the Four Nations face-off juxtaposed with the lackluster NBA All-Star weekend. I believe the ratings did come out. They are down from last year. I'll pull those numbers exactly while you guys are speaking. But it's led to one of those cultural debates, the NHL versus the NBA.
Listen, I think what PK has to understand, first and foremost, when you are trying to make that comparison, you should only talk about your sport, what your sport does. You can't then cross over into the other sport and tell them what they're not doing, because you haven't been on that court. You haven't been in games with those guys. You should have just stuck with what you in the NHL, what the mentality and the culture is with the NHL, not comparing it to basketball, saying that, oh, we play harder than y'all when y'all on the court. When y'all are on the court, we're playing much harder than you guys because we take it a little bit more personal. That's a losing argument each and every time to me, because unless you were a dual sport guy at the highest level, you can't say that. I can listen to Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson, some of these guys that when they compare football and baseball, I can listen to those guys. Because why? Those guys been in both locker rooms. They've been on both playing surfaces at the highest level. So when they talk about both of the sports, I can sit down and say, you know what, maybe they have a good point, because both of those guys had experience in both of those sports. But when you are someone that has no experience in a particular sport, then your argument should just be your sport, what you do in your sport, not, oh, they don't play hard in their sport. Because I guarantee you, those guys, when they step out on the court, they're playing hard. They're not just out there just jacking up shots and just not, try running around for 45 minutes, try running through picks and all this other stuff, and on both ends of the court, and you're playing for a longer period of time when you're talking about, because hockey guys are off and on. But even with that, the physicality, both hockey and basketball are very physical sports. But again, to say that we play harder than you, I don't think that's not a valid argument when you've never stepped on the hardwood, or a basketball player saying, oh, we play harder than you in hockey. Well, how? How can you say that? You've never stepped on an ice in an ice rink at this level?
I I laughed when I heard these comments because I have a unique perspective on this, having been a full scholarship player at major Division I basketball and being a hockey announcer, where I had to learn what I didn't understand, right? When hockey came to Nashville, I didn't know what it was like. I had never played hockey. I played floor hockey. I couldn't skate a lick. If I go out on the ice right now, people would laugh their tail off at me trying to flounder around there. I look like a fish out of water. So I have seen this debate happen over dinner, over beers, and it can get heated, right? Because I think there is a huge, and it came through in that conversation we were just watching, a huge lack of understanding of a basketball player, of what a hockey player's athletic skill set is. And I think just as big is a hockey player's misunderstanding of what it takes to be a world-class basketball player. They have no idea what the other one is like. There has never been a two-sport athlete that plays hockey and basketball. I have yet to meet one. I don't think the human being has been made. And of course, they're at the same time of the year. You can't do it if you wanted to. Okay, so they're clueless about the other side. If PK wanted to really educate and promote just how high a level of athlete you've got to be a great hockey player, I think he could have done that without saying you can step on an NBA floor and go through the motions. You can't do that in hockey. That is completely showing a frame of ignorance to what it means to be a basketball player. I would have loved to have seen a current basketball player or former basketball player challenge PK and come back and say, you come out on the court and you tell me if we're playing hard, because PK you can't make that assumption. Now, what PK could have said, which would have been a good point to argue, is we don't take nights off in the NHL. Yeah. We don't do the load management. We play 82 games. We're expected to play 82 games. Now, that's a good argument. But they're not playing hard, I think that is the biggest misconception. We talk about it all the time. It's the biggest misconception going on. These are, I try to tell the hockey players, right? And hockey players, they'll push back, right? Because the hockey players believe they're the best athletes on the planet. And I try not to take away from that, but I say, look, man, these guys are freaks. These guys are 6'9". They can shoot from 23 to 25 feet out. They can take one dribble to the basket and dunk. They can rebound. Like, these are not guys that you can just, like, these guys are world class. And yeah, it may not look like a 7-footer or a 6'10" guy is running as fast as he possibly can up and down. It's not like hockey. It's a different game. And that was the point that Brian Windhorst made, is when you're expected to play 35 minutes of a 48-minute game, maybe more, there are times where you're not in a full sprint. Hockey, every time you come out on the ice, you're in a full sprint for 45 seconds to a minute. And if you get caught out there, you see what happens. You run out of gas. It's designed differently. They are completely different sports. So I think that's what's going on here. It makes for great discussion.
Yeah,
I hope it picks up, because I hope there are more basketball fans that start discovering hockey. And I hope that there's more hockey fans that discover basketball. But I think what I've come to learn is a lot of the hockey people, they don't get it. They don't get it with basketball. No. And it's absolutely true that there's plenty of basketball people that have never watched a hockey game.
I believe David has the clip from First Take that we're referencing. This was PK Subban on First Take earlier today.
In terms of the money, you're probably right. There is a lot of money. But once again, I asked the question, what are you playing for? Like, if you're really about it, if you're really about sports, then you're about two things: your teammates and the fans. And I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. When you do not show up to play, you're letting your teammates down. When you do not show up to play, you're letting the fans down that are paying you 40, 50, 60 million. I don't care if you're getting 300 million. Congratulations. But these people in here are paying $2,500 a ticket, $5,000, that are blue-collared, hardworking people. If you don't get your head wrapped around that, you shouldn't be in pro sports, because how are we going to grow? How do we expect you to be an example? Well, guess what? You don't want to be. You are one. You're on the biggest stage. You just said it. They make the most money. You're an example. You got to show up. You got to take that on. I'm sick and tired of making athletes greats, all-time greats that aren't the best examples. Those are the people that we want our kids to follow, that we want athletes to follow. That helps us in our game. Stephen A., you want athletes to be educated on this and understand this. They got to understand the importance of showing up to the All-Star game and being on the court and playing banged up sometimes and playing injured maybe at times. Thank you. And participating, because here's the thing. Because you're making 100, 200, 300 million, you should be out there banged up. You should be. That's why we pay you, is to max out. We talk about greatness and it being the longevity of somebody's career. I don't care if you play 50 years. I want your.
All right, Derek, you said cut it off.
Yeah, the hockey players don't play hard in an All-Star game either.
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting, man. Like PK, they don't play hard in this. Okay, he's making a mistake trying to compare an apple to an orange, and people are letting them get away with it. It happens everywhere where you're making a comparison, but you're not making a comparison to things that should be compared. I can't compare an apple to a watermelon. I can't compare an orange to a pear. I can't. And that's what PK Subban is trying to do. He's trying to compare the Four Nations game to an All-Star game. That's like trying to compare the NFL Pro Bowl to the NBA Finals. There's no comparison whatsoever. One means absolutely nothing, and one does. The Four Nations means something. It means something to those guys. They're playing for their nation. That's like an Olympic game for them. The All-Star game means nothing. We're going up, showing up, having fun. If I can play, I'm going to play. I do agree with them because now they have sort of this carrot now, and LeBron's sort of this carrot. We can always go, oh, look at LeBron. He showed up an hour, before the game and decided he wasn't going to play. You are absolutely right. LeBron shouldn't have done that. But if LeBron was going to play, he wasn't going to give you 100%. And if he was hurt, I don't expect my guy on my team that I root for. If LeBron's hurt, LeBron, you bet not playing that All-Star game. You bet not, because we're counting on you during the season. Maybe hockey players should take that attitude. Then they wouldn't be so banged up. But again, I'm not in that sport. That's what they do. And I get it. I commend them for playing, through injury and through pain. I get that. We all do at some point. But make no mistake, these guys that are playing, they're playing through pain. Best believe they are. Joel Embiid, ask him how many surgeries have Joel Embiid had?
Too many to count.
Exactly. And he still tries to get out there and give it his all. You can say it with Kobe. You can say even LeBron. These guys, they play a long, grueling seasons, a lot of minutes per game. When they're banged up, sometimes they're out there playing and you don't even know it. But then there are times where they have to sit down.
We're going to pick up this conversation after we talk to Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL insider. He is live in Boston for the final game tonight. Can't wait to talk to Elliot about it. But remember, I did tell you I was going to give you the cue to call, and I want to see who is the fastest. So if you are caller number one at 615-737-1025, you will win a pair of tickets to see the Predators face the Avalanche on Saturday at Bridgestone Arena at 5 o'clock. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Pleased to be joined on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, by Sportsnet's NHL Insider Extraordinaire, Elliot Freeman, presented by Old National Bank. Elliot, I know that you are in Boston, the site of the final tonight between Canada and the United States. You've been around these teams for the past few days. Give us a vibe check for both teams. What are you feeling right now ahead of this big matchup from them?
The vibe, Adam, is surface of the moon hot. That is the best way I could put it. There's so much here. I mean, the tournament has exceeded expectations. The rivalry between Canada and the United States has exceeded expectations. That game on Saturday in Montreal had exceeded expectations. And now all of the passion and patriotism and the politics have just warped this into something. Adam, on Saturday, I said there's no way that this game could live up to the hype, and it exceeded it. I don't think we're going to see 3 fights in the first 9 seconds tonight, but I do think we are going to be a tough, passionate, intense game that is not for the weak.
Mike Sullivan, the coach of the Americans, said only one player is unavailable for the U.S. squad tonight, that being Charlie McAvoy, who just recently shared on social media that he's out of the hospital. He was in the hospital because he had an infection in his right shoulder and a significant injury to his AC joint. The Bruins announced that the other day. You have some additional reporting about this, about the Bruins not being happy with maybe the treatment that McAvoy received in wake of this injury?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's accusing anyone here of anything nefarious, Adam. I just think that, the Bruins felt that that they just weren't up to speed on what was told. And it was interesting. I was talking to a general manager last night who said to me that one of the real challenges about all of this, and he kind of sees it, is that, it's the Team USA, the doctors are from one team, the GM is from one team, McAvoy plays for the Bruins, his GM in the NHL is, with Boston, is the GM of Team Canada. He said that, what we have to do probably is just, there's probably nothing nefarious here, like nothing. But what it does is it just takes all of this stuff out of the equation. And but the Bruins were unhappy. They felt they didn't have a full update of what happened. Initially it was reported that the injury was not serious. And then you saw the statement the Bruins put out, right? We don't see those statements too often. And that made it very clear how they felt about the whole situation. And we'll see exactly what comes of it. I'm happy to hear that McAvoy is out of the hospital. I don't know what his status is going to be, but it just appears to be one of those things that either at the beginning they didn't realize how serious it was, and the Bruins didn't feel that they knew, and it just, they won't talk about it any more than the statement, but it's clear they weren't thrilled.
Elliot, I have a 2-part question here for you. Which NHL player participating in this tournament has enhanced his reputation because of his performance? Conversely, which player participating in this tournament has hurt his reputation based off of his performance in this tournament?
Well, I would say that even though I think they had huge reputations and going into this tournament in the hockey world, I think the Tkachuk brothers are now like crossover stars, right? Like there are some athletes that are bigger than their sport. Shohei Ohtani is, obviously one of those guys. And I'm not comparing him to them. It's way too big. But I think that you occasionally get players who cross more into the mainstream and they become as much a social phenomenon as they do a sporting phenomenon. And I think the Tkachuk brothers definitely did that. in this tournament with their fights the other day. So I would say them. I think players who have heard it, I think Pettersson from Vancouver, he really struggled in this tournament, didn't play much in the game that Sweden beat the U.S. on Monday night. I don't think that was good for him. I think the Maple Leaf guys have big pressure on them tonight, probably because of the stage of the big stage of the game, and the fact they have one of the biggest fan bases, Marner for Canada, Matthews, the captain of the United States. Like Maple Leaf fans always get Maple Leaf players. Like they're always like Wendell Clark. One of the best stories I remember, Adam, was there about 20 years ago. There was a player named Jamie Baker. That was about 30 years ago. Jamie Baker, who was traded to the Maple Leafs, and Wendell Clark was the captain at the time. And when Jamie Baker arrived, Wendell Clark told him, if you want to survive in Toronto, you've got to understand one thing. You're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are. And, I've always remembered that. And the Maple Leaf fans are kind of having this with Matthews and Marner tonight. I'll tell you this too. A guy that you guys know, who I think did well for himself here, and has only made Dallas look even smarter for acquiring him, is Michael Granlund.
Absolutely.
Very quietly, I thought he had a really good tournament for Finland.
I remember, Elliot, when we were out in San Jose and they had that crazy Nashville came back from 5-1 down to beat them, but Granlund played really well in Nashville. Then they had a home and home, very convenient hop over to San Jose, and they played again. Granlund played even better in another 6-5 crazy game, but I remember asking you about him at that time. That was before he got dealt, obviously. But, man, he looks so much better than he did a year or two ago. He has had a revival, and Dallas has got to be super excited about him.
Yeah, he was really good here. The Finns, they only won once. They lost a couple of times, but they were really undermanned, and they played real hard, and he was really good.
We'll talk with Elliot Freeman, 32 Thoughts podcast. Now, Elliot, the Four Nations tournament is going on, and it's been a damn good one. I tell you, it's got me, even though I just watch really the Predators, it's really got me into watching the games from.
You want to put on the pads, Derek? You're ready to put on the pads?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I couldn't even stand up on a pair of ice skates. But when you're looking at this sport, Elliot, and every sport, I think, has their sort of moment where it goes from being okay to it's taken off, whether it was women's, the WNBA when Caitlin Clark came in, whether it was golf a while ago with Tiger Woods, the women's soccer team during the Olympics. Everybody after that sort of started to gravitate toward it. Can that be said, I think, in the future in regards to hockey? Because of this Four Nations and the way it's being played with all the talent on the ice, and they've been exciting games, do you think eventually this tournament can bleed into the season in regards to people paying attention to the NHL as a whole?
I hope so, Derek. I think the thing is that's always tough is that it's very hard to get games that mean this much during the year. Like games like that one, we don't see enough of those anymore, especially with that level of player. I think what's going to help now, Derek, is that the pros are back in the Olympics starting next year, and we're going to start doing this tournament every 2 years as well. I just think the more we get best on best, the more we're going to see this. And I think, Derek, too, like the biggest thing I hope is that I think hockey is one of those games that's better to watch in person. As much as I love watching it on TV, you get the size and speed of and what these guys can do on skates when you're there. And I hope it gets people into the building. The number one thing, though, Derek, is I really think, and this is something that your community has done really well, is got to get kids playing. And maybe not even ice hockey, just road hockey. Like ice hockey is really expensive. It's a very challenging thing, to afford for a lot of families. So I almost look at it like if you get people playing road hockey or street hockey, at least they get some understanding of what you can do and how the sport works. That to me is the big key. That's the thing I hope that the NHL and the players capitalize most on this. I wonder if there's going to be a lot of kids out there saying, hey, I want to try that. And whether it's on the ice or on the street, they need that opportunity because then they're going to want to go to the games.
So it's sort of like, flag football. If you want to get a kid sort of used to football as a whole, or family sort of used to football as a whole at the ground sort of level, you throw them in the flag football and then they sort of follow it all the way up into tackle football, and they tend to stay with it a little bit longer, or the family becomes fans of just football in general.
I think that's a perfect comparison, 100%.
Talking to Elliot Friedman. Elliot, a couple other things to watch tonight. We know how people are with hockey injuries, and this feels like you got to play it close to the vest. I know everybody is saying the Tkachuks are okay. Yeah. I'm just concerned. Like Herm Edwards, who used to come on our show a lot, I think he's a great guy to listen to talk football. He's got a fun saying that he said when he had guys who were maybe warming up and deciding whether they should activate them or deactivate them on a particular Sunday, and he would say, I know you can start the game, but can you finish the game? Mm-hmm. How much do you think we're dealing with the Canucks? As much as you can say, because we'll never really know until we find out.
Well, I think it's a great question, and I wouldn't be surprised, Willie, if after this tournament's over, some guys miss games for their regular team. Now, I do think there are some teams in the NHL, like, for example, Winnipeg plays St. Louis on Saturday night when the schedule resumes. The Jets talked yesterday, and they've got potentially 3 guys playing tonight. They've got Connor Hellebuck in goal for the U.S., they've got Josh Morrissey on defense for Canada. And I don't know what's going on here with Kyle Connor, who's at forward for the United States, because it looks like there's a chance he might not play. But they talked about resting their guys on Saturday, like giving them a break. But I also wonder if we've got some guys here who are more banged up than they're admitting, and they might take a game or 2 off or more when they get back. I think you're onto something, Willie, but I just don't think we're going to know until these guys get back to their NHL cities.
How much do you think the Canadians learned from the first matchup with the U.S. of how the U.S. is going to try to play them, how the U.S. shut them down? What adjustments do you think we'll see from Canada? Because I'm sitting here and I'm not quite sure you could possibly shut them down more than you did in the first game. I'm thinking if I'm USA, I better get a few more goals.
I think that one of the things that really stood out to a lot of players is that that game between Canada and the U.S. was one of the best defensively played games that they'd ever seen. They said when you take all of the offensive talent that was on the ice in that game, and then you see how hard it was for guys to move out there and how hard it was to score, that those players were committed, absolutely committed to defending. And if you think about it, you look back to that game, like there was that one spectacular goal by McDavid, but other than that, there wasn't a lot of room to move. I think the USA will play exactly like that again. I think they're going to make sure that their spacing is tight, that they defend the middle of the ice, particularly in their zone. And, they make it hard for the Canadians to get to the net. That's what they did very successfully. A lot of Canada's chances were perimeter. If you take a look at the Canadians, since that game, they moved Braden Point up with McDavid. They realized they had to get guys who were a little bit faster that could play with him, that could stay with him. And the one thing is, I believe, is this. Canada has the best elite talent, McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, and those guys were all great in their last win over Finland. But I think the U.S. 1-18 has been the better team from start to finish. They've had more players make a contribution, and they've just been the best team top to bottom since this tournament started. I think if Canada's going to win, they're going to need someone from like their third or fourth line to come up and make a big play or have a great night. That to me is important. I just think the U.S. from top to bottom has gotten more contributions from more people than anyone else.
Elliot, you guys have discussed on your podcast the timing of this in terms of the U.S. perspective when you're not in the spotlight of the football, which is different than it would be if you played this in September. And so you're getting a huge spotlight. You have PK Subban is everywhere on the ESPN circuit. And I'm really curious about the audience tonight, because one of the things, for example, that has come up where you just wouldn't get the spotlight is hockey. I think as a guy who played a lot of basketball growing up and at a pretty high level at the college level here in town, I've had a lot of fun debates over the years with hockey players. I said this before. I don't think I've ever met a person who has played a high level of hockey and a high level of basketball. You've covered both. But one thing that really came out, I think there's a lot of lack of understanding of the other culture. But I think in the meantime, this discussion is only good for the NHL, because I think they're going to have a lot of eyeballs tonight that they wouldn't ordinarily have because we're so in our own little bubbles.
Yeah, and I hope people won't be disappointed when there aren't 3 fights in 9 seconds this time.
Right.
I don't think we're going to have that again. We interviewed JT Miller, who was in the third fight for the pod. And, he said, he laughed and he said, yeah, I'm not fighting tonight. Like, I want to play. I don't know how, some guys are saying maybe you get 1, but you don't think 3. I think, nobody's going to want to be in the penalty box for at least 5 minutes in this game. It's too big a game, right? So we'll see how many we get. Look, this is a huge opportunity. And like I said, I think it's going to be an intense, fierce, nasty game. And I think that's going to be a great show. The one thing is I Luc Robitaille, who's the president of the LA Kings. I remember he was one of the guys. He's Canadian by birth. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame as a player, and now he has a big business position with that team. And he's one of the guys who really convinced me that this tournament couldn't be in September anymore. He said, if we're ever going to hit it here, and it's not, and people have reminded me since I said that, Willie, and you guys in Tennessee, you'll understand this. In September, it's not only the NFL. It's, the NCAA is playing almost every night. High school football's big in a lot of these places. You really get stuck behind everybody else. This proved that the timing was brilliant. And, with the NBA, look, we've had terrible all-star games in the NHL too. We have a problem we have to fix when it comes to those. But the timing just turned out to be beautiful. And even if the NBA All-Star game was better, I still think that game, the way it was played, it would have captured people's attention. It was just a great sporting event. I just think the biggest thing that hockey has to do, as I said to Derek earlier, the only way you capitalize on this is you're going to have people saying, wow, that's really cool. How do we get them into a ring? How do we get them to pick up a hockey stick? That's the way you truly build.
Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet's NHL Insider, sponsored by Old National Bank. Elliot, we love you. We respect you. We hope that you're sad by the end of the evening.
I completely understand. Before the tournament, Adam, I did pick the U.S., and I never like to waver on my picks. I just said, it's hard for me to bet against Crosby, McKinnon, and McDavid. If a couple of those guys would probably roll their eyes at a prediction, but McDavid might put me through a wall, and that quite frankly terrifies me.
And of course,
I don't want to admit that around him.
And with Makar in, that's a huge thing for the casual fan that, for our listeners that maybe don't want Makar missing the first game. He's another nuclear weapon that will be in a Canada jersey
too. McAvoy being out, he was one of the best Americans. He physically pounded McDavid. That trade, quote unquote, Makar in, McAvoy out, that's massive for both teams.
Elliot, enjoy the game tonight. It should be a great one.
All right, guys. Have yourselves a great night. Enjoy.
You as well. Elliot Freeman joining us on the program. 615-737-1025. We'll discuss the game coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Thanks to Elliot Freeman for joining us, as he does every Thursday, setting up the Four Nations Face-Off final. Again, that game tonight in Boston, puck drop, 7 o'clock Central Time. So be sure to tune in for that. The ratings for the first matchup were huge on ABC, 4.4 million average, 5.2 peak. Curious to see what happens tonight. Willie, Elliot mentioned something interesting, and I was doing a story for sportsnet.ca yesterday, previewing, because it's a Canadian website, I tend to preview things from the Canadian angle. So I was looking at how Canada can rebound from the loss to the Americans and win this game tonight. The Canadians have scored 10 goals in this tournament. 9 of them have involved at least one of Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, and Sidney Crosby. The Canadians have scored 1 goal this whole tournament that involved none of them, and that was Brad Marchand's goal in the first game. So that's to Elliot's point about maybe finding a quote-unquote unsung hero. And it's funny to say that when the unsung hero is probably a highly paid star player, but that's what it is in these sort of settings. But I agree with Elliot. I don't anticipate there being any, immediate puck drop fighting as we saw over the weekend. But the intensity is going to be off the charts. I said this yesterday. I actually like that there have been 2 days between games because there's even more of that anticipation to build. These players are going to be, pardon the cliche here, ready to run through a wall in this game. So really excited. I'm bullish on the United States because of what we talked about from the get-go. They have the best goaltender in this tournament. Connor Hellebuyck has been outstanding in this tournament. He's the best goalie in the world for a reason. And look, Jordan Binnington, he's been fine, but he's led in some questionable goals. And you don't want that to happen if you're Canada tonight. So despite all of the firepower on the other side, I picked, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, I picked the U.S. to beat Canada and take it to the bank. So
I did not.
I am prepared and hopeful that the U.S. will pull it off tonight.
My vision, what it was going to, I thought Canada would hold serve at home and then the USA in Boston on the bounce back. I am a little concerned for Team USA beating that team twice will be tough. This is the case. This is like, thanks, Captain Obvious, but the goaltending is such a big thing. Jordan Binnington, remember, in that building in Boston, he won Game 7.
Yes, he did.
Of the Stanley Cup final. His finest hour. He was an out-of-nowhere story who went on a run, parlayed that into a big contract, and he has not played really that well ever since. Not really. He's had some stretches.
He's lived off that reputation.
Yes,
for the past few years.
And
he's had some solid seasons.
He's obviously proven he can play big in a big game.
Yes.
But as you said, in this tournament, he's been okay, but he hasn't been lights out, and that could be the difference. If I'm the U.S. and I'm saying, let's do what we did before. If we can execute it, don't go into the penalty box. Let's defend. And if it's a lower chance game, we'll get the extra goal. Our goalie's better than their goalie. I think that will be the game plan, especially without with some guys that are banged up for Team USA. And I do think that's a huge factor to watch. How effective are the Tkachuks? And I didn't know anything about Kyle Connor. I also think Austin Matthews is not nearly 100%. So if I'm the coaching staff, which includes former Predator coach John Hines, by the way, they're all Boston guys. I'm looking at, do I have the firepower at the top of my lineup that Canada does? No. But can I play good team defense? Do I have enough scoring to get a few against Canada? Yes. But it's got to be a lower chance game, I think.
Are you, I guess you wouldn't be, but are you kind of, maybe a little bit concerned about how the U.S. played the last game. I know it was a meaningless game.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
but are you concerned?
They had a
about,
letdown.
Yeah.
They lost the game
exactly
against Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it's hard to play a game when you know you're in.
You're
like that's a
in,
weird game. Like they rested some.
But
guys.
it's almost like
they dressed one less guy than they had. Like they just said, look, we can't get anybody else hurt, so they only dressed 11 forwards.
But it's almost like do you play your team when you already know you're in the playoffs, and do you play your team that last game, or do you put in some other guys? Because then typically you go into the first round of the playoffs and everybody seems rusty.
Yeah,
because nobody really played significant minutes. So when I look at that game, because it was a meaningless game, maybe they're a little bit out of, and I'm not saying it's going to hurt them throughout the game, but probably at the beginning of the game.
And they didn't play bad. They hit the post like 5 times in that game. They had the lead. It's not like Sweden dominated the game.
No.
But it was a weird game because you're sitting there going, okay, we're resting Matthews, resting Tkachuk, or Matthew Tkachuk. Then Brady Tkachuk is hurt. So, oh, man, now we've got a lot of things we've got to deal with. And now McAvoy, this whole situation's come up. So you put it all together, they're dealing with a lot of situations where it's not like they're rolling the same lineup out for the third or fourth straight game. And you're like, okay, here's how we do it. We're only going to get better. We're only going to get better. Whereas Canada, I think there's less. They're adding Cale Makar, and I think they're sitting there going, we haven't played a great 60 minutes yet in this tournament. If we do, we can take it. I also think there's emotions are going to be so high tonight too, for all these reasons swirling around here. I look, I'm Team USA all the way, but I kind of like the mental position of Canada. You're on the road. You've already been beat once. You're out of the glare of your own country saying you should be the best. You're Canada. We should dominate. It's almost like USA basketball. They're not supposed to lose. But so I think Canada being on the road will actually be a good thing for them. So I think you're going to get a good game from Canada. The X factor is Binnington.
Hold on. Did we do it? Take it to the bank for the final game? I didn't think so. When Adam said that, I'm like,
no, we did not. But I predicted last Friday that the U.S. would beat Canada on Saturday.
Okay,
So we did not do a prediction for the final game.
Should we do an early prediction?
Should we? Up to David. It's up to David.
Take it to the bank.
I'll let the commissioner decide.
I'll let you guys pick the champ. I'll let you guys do it for the Four Nations final. I'll let you do that.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll get to that. But the other intriguing thing in all of this, Willie, that ultimately didn't happen. You mentioned Cale Makar coming back for Team Canada. There was a lot of intrigue about Quinn Hughes because when you talk about Cale Makar, probably the only defenseman on his level in the NHL right now is Quinn Hughes. And Quinn Hughes was supposed to play in the tournament, pulled out before the tournament because of injury. When Charlie McAvoy went down, Mike Sullivan said, Quinn Hughes is on his way. And I'm imagining that Willis Reed type moment from Quinn Hughes, but he ultimately will not play in the game. He was practicing in Vancouver. So if he was going to fly across the continent, he better be playing, but he's not going to play.
And he's not eligible to play unless they can prove another guy's hurt. It was very weird because Mike Sullivan at one point said he's on his way.
Yes. He's coming to Boston is what he said.
So there was a lot going on behind the scenes that we may never know.
Scott is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Scott, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, wanted to talk a little bit about the Charlie McAvoy situation.
Sure.
I think Elliott may have downplayed it a little, actually, based on some of the other reporting that I've seen on this. And I was shocked when I saw in the ESPN crawl that he was in the hospital because, there was nothing that came out about this early on. But apparently he got hurt versus Finland, and there was a injury to the joint or separation or something that should have been caught. And he got an injection, and the injection is what caused the infection. And the backstory of this is, the USA Medical people are the Minnesota Wild people. And Boston's GM is really salty because, they had traded with Minnesota for Pat Maroon they'd gotten Pat Maroon from Minnesota at the deadline. And Minnesota said, hey, he's checks out medically, great, he's ready to go.
Hey, Scott, I don't mean
And
to
then
interrupt.
Maroon, and then Maroon gets there and he's not ready to go, and he has to sit out until almost the playoffs. So I'm worried. Anybody can get hurt, whether they're giving 100% or not. But if GMs and teams can't.
Thank you for the call, Scott.
Yeah, he makes good points. This is, we didn't want to have all of Elliott's interview on this. We could have probably spent 15 minutes on this. Elliott was the one that reported all this to start with. So when he said there's reporting, it was Elliott's reporting, but he's also had a lot of people reacting to his initial report. Is that fair to say? And the other thing that's weird is Canada's GM is also, is it Boston's
It's
GM?
Don Sweeney, yes.
Boston's GM is Canada's GM. So that's weird. You got a lot going on. So the Bruins, so you're wearing two hats at the same time, which is kind of a conflict.
It sounds like Scott was going down a sort of conspiratorial lean there.
Right. And I think Elliott, he tried to put it in a nutshell, say he doesn't think anything was mean-spirited or conspiratorial.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up the show. We'll make our picks because David says we can do a little early, take it to the bank. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Here it's Ulf Samuelson shooting and scoring. He gets a second goal. Ulf Samuelson gets the Penguins their 6th goal. Now he's smiling like a butcher's dog. Over to Murphy. Shooting, scoring. Deflected by Yager, I believe. Yager may have got a stick on it. The Penguins have taken an early 1-0 lead. Now Murphy and the fans are smiling like a butcher's dog.
That was legendary Pittsburgh Penguins broadcaster Mike Lang. Unfortunately, Lang died this week. He was 76 years old. Willie, as a hockey broadcaster, many hockey broadcasters have been influenced by Mike Lang, have Mike Lang stories. I never met Mike Lang, but I've heard enough about him to know that he was a good man. But you said you had a funny story about Mike Lang.
Well, and not directly about Mike. I only met him a few times. Pete Weber knows him very, very well. He was the voice of the Penguins from 1974 until 2021. Like, iconic. And as you can tell with those sayings and stuff, some of the hilarious sayings that he has a bunch of them. Elvis has left the building. If you talk to any Penguins fan, he's a legend. So we wanted to salute him, an absolute legend. And a lot of Predator fans probably don't have a feel for him, but the one story I have was Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Predators against the Penguins. My role is doing post-game interviews down in the locker room for, at the time, Fox. We were doing pre and post-game coverage. So I get in the elevator. You have to get down to the locker room from the press box while the game's still going on. And you're trying not to miss as much any of the game that you can. But in the elevator, you can't tell. But they have the radio call in the elevator. So we're hearing Mike Lang's call. And Mike Lang is a legend, right? So I jump in the elevator. Who's in the elevator with me? Steve Levy, Barry Melrose, Elliot Friedman, right? They're all getting down there doing the same thing they're getting ready for their post-game stuff. And Mike Lang just makes you smile and laugh because when he starts talking, he's just got he has that unique thing that any announcer just really craves and hopes that they have, just the ability to capture.
You got the connect factor.
Yeah, so we're all just listening intently to Mike Lang going down the elevator. And at the same time, I did look at Elliot and say, because this is Game 1, PK Subban scored the first goal of the series.
Wiped out.
It was wiped out for offside. It was a very controversial call.
Yes.
That Peter Laviolette absolutely lost his mind after the game. I thought there was going to be an altercation in the press box because he went up to talk to the replay officials after the game. And his take was it was inconclusive. So I asked Elliot, I said, what do you think of the first goal? This is in the elevator. He goes, you guys got screwed. I was like, yeah.
Unfortunately, Elliot Friedman does not have the power. He is a powerful man, but not that powerful.
So we had the collective experience with Mike Lang and Elliot Friedman on the elevator at the same time. But there are two controversial calls in that series that Predator fans will never forget. One in Game 1.
Hashtag
one in Game
Sisson
6.
scored.
Yes.
Hashtag Sisson scored. All right. So David, the commissioner of Take It to the Bank, we normally do this on Friday, which we will do again tomorrow. But because of the Four Nations face-off being tonight, the final game, that is, David has so graciously allowed us to make our selections, which he will factor
Make one
in.
pick.
Make one, just
pick the game?
Just pick the game.
Pick the game. And I'll add some. Okay. You can have two picks. You can pick the game.
And a wrinkle, a little prop.
Yes,
Okay.
and a prop.
Okay. Willie,
Only one, though, D-Mace, not
Only
part A.
one.
D-Mace is thinking part A, part B, part C.
David, do you
No,
want...
he said two.
David, do you want game and score or just, like winner and score or just winner?
Just winner.
Okay. Why don't you go
Just
first?
win, baby.
Why don't you go first?
Listen, I have one thing that I want to play for the people. This is for Team USA. This is just a little thing from. I'll just let it play.
This is your time. Their time is done. It's over. I'm sick and tired of hearing about what a great hockey team the Soviets have.
Canadians.
Screw them.
Canadians.
This is your time. Now go out there and take it.
Yeah!
USA.
Team USA for the victory. I'm going Austin Matthews goal, baby. Let's go.
The only thing we omitted was screw them. Remember that there's that one. That line in there. The longer version.
Willie, why don't you go next?
Look, I look, my patriotism is going to come out when the game starts. I'm concerned. Just from a hockey standpoint, I think the U.S. is banged up. I'm leaning Canada in this game. And listen, take all of you, all of the Team USA people listening. Just remember, I'm in last place in our contest.
Technically, I'm in last place.
I'm taking Canada. And the other thing, this is my prediction. I think one of the Tkachuks will not finish the game. I think they're so banged up. Maybe they'll be the inspired. We thought they were hurt and they play great. That's what I'm hoping happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really concerned about their health. I think they're legitimately hurt and they're going to try to play through it. But I don't know if they can be effective.
All right, Derek.
Oh man.
So you're taking Canada, Willie, right?
I'm taking Canada.
Okay.
Hey Willie, you got to say it with your chest, man. You got to say it with your chest. All right. I'm taking Canada.
Oh,
okay? It's like Ali versus Frazier, two heavyweights. Frazier won the first match. Ali is going to win the second and final match. I think these two teams are so evenly matched, but I just think the firepower of McDavid and McKinnon is going to be ultimately, and like Willie said, I think the U.S. team is banged up. They're going to play, they're going to give it their all, but I think they're banged up. I think that first game took a lot out of them. And I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm picking Canada to win. And I'm picking Connor McDavid to have a goal.
Okay. That leaves it to me. USA. USA. I can't go back on it now. I picked them to win the first matchup. It would be unpatriotic of me, unlike other people in this room, to pick against.
Hey, I need the points like Willie said. I'm in second place, man.
No. Can't believe you're taking points over your own country.
I can't believe
Absolutely,
this
I
is just
am.
like Saturday all over
Money
again.
over country. Let's go.
All right. David had a good pick. I considered it as well. I don't want to make the same pick as David. You know, Austin Matthews, Elliott talked about. You know, he's had a slow tournament. It would mean nothing more to him, I'm sure, than to win the tournament in Boston. You know, all right, so I'm going to pick the Americans, and I will say that Connor Hellebuyck will allow 2 or fewer goals.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that is the best path. It's a really good effort from him and exploit Jordan Binnington. That's the key.
Yeah, they got to be like, man, with Binnington anyway.
And stay out of that penalty
like,
box.
whew.
Because we remember the image.
But they've done
let
a good
the dogs
job.
off the leash. That's what happened early for Finland. Which, by the way, after we got off the air the other day, how about the run that Finland made?
Oh yeah, to
down
get back
4-0.
in the game.
UC
Yes.
Saros comes in, keeps it 4-0, and then suddenly Finland scores 3 and gets back in it and made them sweat a little bit. But the game was lost early because McKinnon and McDavid got loose. And if you let them loose, there is no stopping them. So one thing, stay out of that penalty box.
But do you think they can play as physical as they did the first game? Talking the U.S. That's going to be the problem, because I think that helped a lot.
McAvoy's not playing.
Yes.
I'm concerned that both Tkachuks who really bring that physical edge, they may not be able to do it as well. So I'm concerned about that.
All right, we shall see. U.S. and Canada tonight, 7:00 puck drop. USA.
If USA wins, we're throwing Willie and Demas into the harbor.
Yes.
The harbor.
Yes. We'll get Hal Gill to put on his biggest Boston accent and then spend the entire first segment just criticizing the both of you. But that'll do it for us. Stillman and Company coming up next, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Be love on your people. Have a blessed, wonderful, and safe Thursday. Stay warm. Peace. Oh,